Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Option Menu Crew Hot Fixes, where we discuss weekly gaming news. However, we're not going to be doing this weekly anymore. Ed and I said at the beginning that we were experimenting with this format, and after experimenting with it for 4 episodes, we decided that it's not quite a good fit for us. So it's just taken up a bit more time than we want to, and we've been talking about the podcast. 'Cause once again, we're hobbyists. We're doing this for fun. So it has to fit into our lives, and it's just this is not quite it's not quite going to fit. So this will be the last weekly episode, and for those who are new listeners, I'm your default settings, Ryan. Nice to meet you, everyone. And my other crew member with me today is Ed, our language settings. How you doing, buddy?
I still don't know if language settings is right,
You
but
picked it.
I you put me on the spot.
Yeah. Well, you've had time to think about it in between episodes. Don't pretend like I didn't give you a chance.
Yeah, I kind of like forget about it every time because every time. Yeah. I wasn't expecting you to keep introducing yourself as the default settings. I've really like stuck with that gag.
I'm kind of like this. Yeah, default settings is more like it's not even like a setting, is it? It's the default of everything. But like I
Yeah.
guess I can't call myself the difficulty settings because the difficulty settings aren't in every games. But I am controversial. Um, I don't know what's other standard other than like master volume. I am the master volume setting. That's pretty funny. You could be the sound effects. How about that? You're the sound effects.
I could be the
Or
inverted camera because I feel like I always have to like provide the devil's advocate to something.
oh man, that's great. That's great. The inverted camera setting. The inverted camera toggle. All right. That's excellent. So, on this week, of course, there was the big news of the Nintendo Direct, but we'll touch on that in a little bit. We've got a few other stories to talk about today. And 5 things. A lot of them blend together. We've got them in a nice little order here. So, right off the top, there was an interview with Platinum Game Studios' new CEO. And that is, he was a former employee he's been promoted. I'm trying to look for his name. Atsushi Inaba has taken over as the CEO of Platinum Games, and we are reading this article from gamesindustry.biz. They are referencing an interview from the famous Japanese gaming magazine Famitsu, as translated by VGC. And so in that interview, Inaba said that they hope to try and make some different games. Uh, Considering the changes in the market over the next 5 years or so, I think it is absolutely necessary for us to do this, he said. Um, he did reference their working title game, Project GG, which is supposed to be the conclusion to Hideki Kamiya's superhero trilogy saga, which starts with Beautiful Joe, was continued with Wonderful 101, and will conclude with Project GG, which seems to be some sort of like giant superhero action game of some sort. And what they want to change is from creating games that are like the shorter style experiences of, say, Bayonetta, to longer form, perhaps service based games. Very interesting. But it's not too strange considering that every time they've made a smaller game, it's just not selling to crazy commercial success. Their best successes have been Nier Automata, which was a collaboration with Square Enix. And while Bayonetta is continuing to be funded, the first game by Sega, second one partnered with Nintendo and Sega, and the third also being published by Nintendo. And Nintendo did commission them to make Astral Chain. These games just aren't super big successes. They are currently working with Square Enix again on a original IP called Babylon's Fall that is set to be some sort of action RPG service game, multiplayer based. Think of like just a Diablo or whatnot. And things aren't looking so great. The few gameplay demos that have been out there have been rough. So hopefully after their playtest, they've fixed a lot of stuff, and that game's set to come out, I think, next month in March. But yeah, it's also concerning because anytime they've really made a multiplayer game or a multiplayer focused thing, it's just not been much better. And while they make amazing games, it's really sad that they just can't break through to huge commercial success with something. And I get it; they're trying to do some other stuff. However, on the flip side, Inaba is also quoted in saying, from a I'm reading the story via Silicon Era, who's referencing an interview with IGN Japan, where Inaba said they would like to work with Microsoft again and revisit Scalebound. So, Inaba's quote here is, "As for Scalebound, this is something Kamiya has always wanted to do, so we would like to have a proper discussion with Microsoft." Kamiya followed up by saying, "We have a lot of work to do, and it's really no use for Microsoft to keep Scalebound, so we would like to do something with it. Phil, let's do it together." My take on that.
So, are they saying that they want to take the IP from Microsoft and do it themselves?
Well, I guess there's a couple ways you could go with that. I think it's clear that Platinum Games is talking to Microsoft, and considering that Microsoft has been doing a bunch of acquisition stuff, I'm sure they're revisiting partnerships and seeing what they can get. As we know and have discussed on multiple previous episodes, is Game Pass is this behemoth that Microsoft continues to fuel with software and will continue to do so. So I think it makes a lot of sense that they're going to go back and talk about this project that was kind of just left in the middle of nowhere and was like maybe 25% done. I mean, it was coming along, but it was far from finished. Um, I think, I don't think, unless Microsoft gave them a big deal, that Platinum Games would just be able to outright buy the IP and all the rights and stuff for them to make their own game. I think it's more likely that Microsoft would leverage it and go with, especially with Platinum Games being a smaller studio, being like, hey, why don't we partner together? Exclusive Microsoft console exclusive, comes to PC, comes to Game Pass. Build this game for us. We give you a huge budget. We do it right this time. Let's not get in your way. Let's make a big project. Let's bring it back. It'll make the fans happy. It'll make Microsoft look good, and hopefully bring you guys a lot of money as well. I think that's the conversation that's going to happen, and we can only hope that that's exactly how it's going to go, and both of them are going to be like super amicable and ready to do this. Platinum Games gets a big budget with a lot of time and not as much interference from Microsoft, because the game was already ambitious for Platinum Games size, but then there was that multiplayer co-op element that they were starting to work in, which probably inflated things and really threw things out of whack overall. So maybe they bring back the scale of Scalebound and bring it back down to like just this big single player action RPG, a la like what Sony does with all its big games, like Horizon Zero Dawn and the upcoming Horizon Forbidden West. You don't need multiplayer for those games to sell well, and I think if they went that route, especially now that that game kind of exists as like a template, it's a test. It's been a market test, and then Horizon has sold extremely well for Sony, both on its PlayStation platform and on PC. And the sequel is set up to sell incredibly well as a brand new IP, selling over 10 million units in its lifetime so far. That's incredible. So yeah, that's my optimistic view. I've always been saying hashtag never forget Scalebound. So yeah, I think that's where it's going. Yeah, Ed, I recently introduced you to Scalebound. So what did you have to say?
Yeah, I had heard the title before, but I didn't really know anything about it. I think it may have been announced and shown at E3 during like a couple years where when I wasn't really following or playing games. So I think I just may have missed the whole story about
Yeah,
that. But I watched a gameplay video of it from, I guess it was from E3 maybe, but and it looked really cool. It's probably not it's not up to modern standards, but like you said, it was only like in early
yeah,
stages, so there's be a lot of work to be done. But
yeah,
I think that at least for me, I would like to see Game Pass have more third third person action games as possible offerings. I'm
yeah,
not big on first person shooters, and that's a lot of what Microsoft is good at. And they do have I guess they do have uh, Gears of War, which is third person. So it's not, but they're very heavy on their shooters. That's a strong component that and that Sony themselves is not good at. So like, it would be a good thing to round out their library, their first party library on Game Pass. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think if I had to say anything, I would love that Microsoft pretty much do nothing except fund Platinum Games and let them work on their stuff. Um, with maybe one exception, which is Platinum Games stories are zany, humorous, over the top, but I think some of that just doesn't resonate with a large portion of the audience and or target audience because it's just too Japanese, too silly. And that's unfortunate because I think there's a lot of charm in their stories, even with Astral Chain. Although Astral Chain did really veer into nonsense towards the end, and it felt like it wanted to set up for a sequel that's probably never happening, but hard to say. But there's just a lot of elements that weren't quite explained well. So, if anything, I would just say I think Microsoft should at least try to add some writing aid, just some Western perspective, and help the writing team, and leave the gameplay and everything else to Platinum because they know how to do stuff. It's the way they've designed Bayonetta, the way they designed Astral Chain, like especially Astral Chain, which is probably their most polished, in my opinion, like game. I feel like they know what they're doing and they could definitely get the mechanics, and their combat always feels tight. So they just that part needs to be left alone and let Platinum figure out the actual size of their game. It's an easy pun to make, scale and scale bound. And then just maybe the writing, just a little bit of westernization in the writing, just to level it out a little bit to make it a bit more palpable to people who aren't quite into anime writing styles and Japanese like writing tropes. And that might be the key recipe for success. Although, yeah, I mean, Nier Automata was all Japanese written, but then again, it's hard to say. But that what Yoko Taro, the writer of the Nier series, is a unique individual, and he just has a unique beat on like philosophy, and I think that just resonates with a lot of people in a certain way. So, yeah, that's all I got to say there. But speaking of Microsoft, our next news topic, Ed, I'll toss it over to you.
So this is kind of following their new acquisition, and it looks like it's kind of a response to increased scrutiny on those kind of consolidation deals. But it is that Microsoft promises to keep app stores open again, and the title says to ease consolidation concerns. This also comes from gamesindustry.biz. And it, it looks like the idea here is they want to like lay out some principles that they want to follow on Xbox and the Microsoft Store for PCs. There's a few things about like quality, safety, security, and privacy for consumers and gamers, making sure that they are taking care of their data. There's accountability, and they want to hold everyone's apps, including their own, to the same standards. Fairness and transparency, and this is also just they don't want to favor their own applications over other developers, and they want to make sure that the rules for promotion and marketing are easy to understand for everyone and they're applied consistently. And the last one, and I think this is the most important of the principles that they want to lay out, is developer choice. Now, this article here is specific to say that only the first seven for privacy, accountability, and fairness and transparency will apply to Xbox consoles. So it looks like the last four out of the 11 that they lay out are all only going to apply for Windows. And just a summary of a few things here is they're not going to require developers to use their payment system, which obviously on Xbox, you're going to be stuck with Xbox. And they are not going to require developers to give them special deals in the terms in their app store. They don't want to disadvantage developers who use an alternative payment processing system. And this one is interesting. It's we will not prevent developers from communicating directly with their customers. So, uh, they'll allow. I guess this means they just want to give developers the ability to make their own choices, and this is kind of in stark contrast to what we've seen in the last year or two from Apple and the App Store, where they really fight to have as much control as possible over what developers can include in their apps, how they can process payments, how they can do refunds and customer support. So it's different. I think it's a good thing, but it really does seem like it's a reaction to the idea that the FTC is going to step in and stop their deal with Activision Blizzard. They're really trying to lay out a lot of reassurances that it's not going to cause a bunch of anti-competitive behavior from Microsoft.
Yeah. And my read on it also is that this just sets up a lot more goodwill for them to do deals with other developers because they've been in a position where they want to be a service. And I think that they're setting themselves up for much better developer relationships over time, where they're like, hey, we're just not going to be crazy about a lot of this stuff with App Store. And hopefully you will remember that goodwill when we approach you and be like, hey, can we do some deals on some other stuff? It won't rely on like marketplace manipulation. They'll just be like, hey, we got a lot of goodwill. Clearly it's this. You want to maybe do some Xbox Game Pass exclusivity or some special deals with Xbox and Microsoft platforms and Windows, etc. That's my read on it. On top of what you said, which I agree on, is they're also just trying to make themselves look as good as possible to make sure that they don't get taken down by the FTC for any sort of like bad trade and whatnot. I don't think the Microsoft or the Activision Blizzard stuff is in danger. It's a big publisher, but it's like Activision's kind of reduced itself to like a game and a half of notoriety. So even though it like Call of Duty, but although Blizzard, yeah, Blizzard has more games, but it's Blizzard and Activision don't own enough games that they like are controlling the industry. It's not like Nintendo where it's like so many Hallmark titles. It's more like they just bought. It's like Bethesda, except just bigger. It's a Bethesda that makes even more money than that. Owns a bunch of IP that grows a ton. So I don't think there's any issue with that. But yeah, all this stuff looks good, and I think Microsoft's just setting themselves up to look even better. Also, they're still Windows. They're Microsoft. They compete with Apple. So they're trying to make it easier. So when other developers are, and who knows, maybe with Windows Store and stuff like that, they're going to do like a huge update for like Windows 11 and whatnot, and the Microsoft Store, and they're getting ready to do other big deals with like game developers and stuff, and be like, hey, instead of working with Apple's like store, why don't you work with us? We're not going to do any of the stuff that they've messed up. We're offer you better deals and incentivize like marketing with us because we're not going to cut into your profits. Instead, we're just asking for you to do more with the Windows platform specifically. And that I think is going to go a long way. I mean, that's my hope that that's how it is, but I mean, this is what they're saying, and we're going to check and see if what they actually do what they're saying. That's more of what this is.
Yeah, you're probably right that the deal's probably not in any real danger. I just saw that the FTC approved the merger between Warner and Discovery. Like how
Mm-hmm.
HBO and AT&T is selling Warner Media, and they're merging with that's another big media merger. So, we talked about Nvidia and ARM. So it seems like the ones that are under greater scrutiny are the ones that are really like core to technology and
Yeah.
patents, where media is not seen as something that is being monopolized by any one entity, even if some companies like Disney are really dominant in some ways.
And speaking of domination, our next news article is, and this one's coming from PC Gamer. Nvidia, the maker of the most popular graphics cards, has overtaken Meta, the company formerly known as Facebook, in terms of net worth. And that's pretty crazy because Facebook and Meta are just a huge social media platform. They own Instagram as well. I don't know what else they own at this point. And Oculus Quest, of course, has been their leading gaming platform, and there's been gaming on Facebook for a while. To see this is quite crazy. It's kind of really simple here in terms of it seems that Meta, their stock has fallen, and Nvidia's stock has been growing, and so this is just kind of how the math shook out. And to reference, like, this is also on the back of the ARM deal, Nvidia's attempted purchase of ARM falling through. So that's pretty crazy that that didn't hinder them that much, or didn't hinder them in this long run. And also with the chip shortage, as the article explains, it's not so much that the chip shortage is actually causing them to lose money. It's more like their margins are going up because of supply constraints. So everyone's charging more for their graphics cards. The demand is still high, especially since cryptocurrency and Bitcoin mining and all that stuff has exploded the graphics card market. So the demand for graphics cards has increased, and none of that anyone could have predicted. And on top of PC gaming just becoming more popular every day as more and more people are exposed to it, become better at understanding it. While you can't really get graphics cards these days, the other companies, or I should say, you can still get pre-built stuff, and this is probably one of the best times to actually just invest in getting a pre-built if you've had a machine. Hand down your old machine to someone else or sell it off on the market to someone to get started at a cheap price and go in and buy yourself a brand new model, a laptop or tower or whatnot. It's about the only way you're guaranteed to get something. But yeah, this is pretty crazy, especially since Nvidia is so focused as an industry here. Ed, did you have any reaction to this news?
So I was actually curious what the ones that were ahead of Meta and Nvidia. So I looked up a list of largest American companies by market capitalization, and this is on the website companiesmarketcap.com. So,
Well,
and it and this
Nvidia
one is this list is ranking Meta back ahead of Nvidia. So maybe they're vying for seventh place, but I'm not sure how up to date it that are, it might have been in the last few days that changed hands again, but it is notable that they are very close.
Oh, and one other point I wanted to bring up about Nvidia is that also they're partnered with Nintendo for providing the graphics chip inside the Nintendo Switch, and the Nintendo Switch has not gotten any less popular. The OLED Switch model is out there, and as far as I can tell, it's selling. And also, it's not unlikely that Nintendo is gearing up for a Switch successor. And if that's true, and they're going to keep the Switch branding, then it's most likely they're commissioning Nvidia again to make the GPUs for those systems, if not doing a system on chip. And who know? Once again, Nvidia could just be making even more money off that deal, and then once those units actually go out and Nintendo's next console generation plans go out there, once again, even more money. So who knows? Like, this is it's a crazy time for Nvidia, and it's cool to see their success. Also, it's nice to see Facebook kind of go down a peg, evil corporations and all that stuff. But that brings us to
Nvidia is no saint. They were just about to try to buy ARM, and they gave up on that. So, but Meta's probably pretty high up there on the ranking of evil corporations.
I mean, yeah, they all do business in China, and China has slave labor basically. So, no one's completely clean on this, but you have to just rank how evil is evil. And so, not as clean a transition, but Nvidia and Nintendo. So, we'll talk about the big news is that Nintendo had a direct yesterday, and yeah, we've got about 5 minutes left here. So, Ed, what was the big news for you out of the Nintendo Direct?
Well, I'm looking forward to Triangle Strategy, so it was nice to see that is getting a new demo, and I'm excited to try that ahead of time because the progress from the demo will carry over into the full game.
Yeah, it's a real nice trend that Square Enix has been doing with the last couple games. They did that with Neo: The World Ends with You, and
Dragon Quest XI.
Dragon Quest XI.
But I kind of wanted to pick something that was newly announced,
and Bravely Default too.
Me,
just want to throw that.
for me, that was Fire Emblem Warriors Three Hopes. That's
Oh,
the
it's called Three
Muso.
Hopes.
Yeah, Three Hopes. I think it is. Let me just make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, it's yeah, Fire Emblem Warriors Three Hopes. So it's a Muso style game that is like the first Fire Emblem Warriors, but it focuses on characters and story from Three Houses, which is a game I really enjoyed. And I was trying to get some like information on what exactly they're going to be doing with the story, and it looks like it's going to be in the same timeline as the first game, except it's like a golden route. So like, you know, all the different story branches in Fire Emblem Three Houses. No, there's none of them where everybody has a happy ending. And you know, depending on which house you choose and who you choose to recruit, you know, you're going to end up killing people who were like formerly your classmates. So it's like it's not a very happy game in the end. But supposedly this one is going to be at least people think it's going to be all the lords are working together. Everyone's happy. It's the happy ending for everyone. So some people are not happy. Some people kind of think that's a cop out, but um, I'm just happy to see it's going to be new story content and not just a retelling of the original game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then was there anything else in there that struck you?
Well, I don't know if you're going to mention it, but I think everyone in our group is pretty happy about there's going to be Mario Kart 8 DLC, and that's going to have 48 new courses being added to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Some people are disappointed that it's not Mario Kart 9, but I kind of like that for $25 I can basically get all the new course content of a new game. So I don't have to buy another game and I can still play all the old courses. So I kind of think this is a better scenario than if we got a brand new Mario Kart game and it would split the content between the two.
Yeah,
I don't know
let's.
how you feel about that,
Yeah, I
but
just want to spell out little bit more. Nintendo has promised 48 more courses over until the end of 2023. It will be $24.99 for their booster course pass. They will release them in waves, 8 courses at a time, 6 waves, and the first wave is releasing March 18th. So yeah, that I think that's a great value, especially $25 for 48 tracks is fantastic. On top of that, they are doing a promotional offering where if you have Nintendo Online's premium subscription, the DLC is included in a similar way of Animal Crossing's was. So basically, if you have the premium online subscription, you have access to the DLC at no additional cost. If your sub lapses or goes below the premium tier, you lose access to the DLC. However, you are still able to buy the DLC individually to fully own it regardless of subscription, though you will need the online subscription to use online features in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So that's exactly all that is. I think it's pretty cool. I'm fine with there being DLC. I am more shocked at what saying they're doing 48 courses all the way through 2023, what that means for the next generation of Switch. I don't know if that just means that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe will also just be backwards compat on the next Switch, and we're still going to get the next Switch in like a year or so, or if this is a really, really like indirect hint that we're not going to see the next Switch until 2024, and that's kind of sad. But on a positive note, as we're running out here, I was happy to see that Mario Strikers Battle League was announced. I've talked a little bit about before. Mario Strikers Charged on Wii is super fun. The GameCube one, which is just Mario Strikers, is also a lot of fun. So I was hoping that they would bring it back. They totally are. They're making a new version. They're adding some new stuff where like you can change the character stats based on the gear you have unlocked. It looks like 10 characters have been shown off so far for the roster, which is pretty neat. And hopefully there'll be more. And just like the other Mario sports games, it's probably going to have a bunch of free DLC updates over time. I'm super excited for that. And then Ed, you and I were also talking about this. Is as JRPG fans, Square Enix announced. Yes, I'll give a little shout out to other fans. Chrono Cross. Chrono Cross Remastered was unveiled. It is coming to other platforms besides the Switch, but it is coming out. So that's pretty cool. But also, they are bringing over for the first time Live Alive, which apparently was a cult classic Super Nintendo JRPG that never got localized in the West, and so Square Enix is giving it the HD 2D treatment, a la Triangle Strategy, a la Octopath Traveler. And actually, after I saw after that trailer, it looks like Octopath Traveler is like the spiritual successor to that, based on like the whole you pick your characters in the path and you go on like different stories and stuff. And I guess they're eventually going to intertwine, and there's going to be some secret characters and stuff like that. So that's pretty neat. I'm basically treating it like it's a brand new game because it never came out here. So now I'm interested, and I mean, I'm like, I've decided I will put that on my list. I hope it's not coming just to Switch, but if it's only on Switch, I think I'll still get it and play. I'm kind of excited for that. But yeah, Mario Sugar Charge is the big thing. I think we're all going to get into it. That'll be a lot of fun. And then yeah, Nintendo actually showed off a bunch of other stuff. No hardware news, a bunch more ports, and some other crazy reveals that were just not expected. And bringing back some other classic games. So yeah, please go check out the news. It's everywhere. I'm sure by the time you're listening to this, you've already seen that stuff. So that was really cool. And that's our news for this week. That was the hot fixes. So yeah, just a reminder, yeah, we're going to stop doing the weekly stuff with this, and we're just going to be we'll do a hot fix episode as basically like our react format if there's ever any news, when we think there's something that we really want to just do like a quick take on and put it out there. Otherwise, we're going back to just the normal podcast stuff, and we'll have some announcements for the next episode there. All right. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us this week. Like, subscribe, yada, yada, and all of that, and listen to us wherever you enjoy it. And thank you so much for being here. And Ed, thank you as well.
Yep. I'm glad we did this. Bye.
Bye.